Hello, I'm Philip Muggleston, and in this series of videos we're covering the predictive capabilities native to SAP HANA. In this video we're going to look at the first of three new time series tests that add additional value to the time series algorithms that have already been made available in the predictive analysis library. If we look here at the PAL functions, we have the time series section. We have ARIMA, Brown exponential, Crostons, single, double, and triple exponential smoothing, for example. But now there are actually three new test algorithms available with SPSO 10. So the first one we'll look at is the white noise test. Now, the white noise test is very simple and straightforward. It allows you to know, basically, yes or no, true or false, whether or not it identifies white noise existing in a time series set of data that you have. So it's useful for extra analysis. So let's get straight into the code. So this is the PAL 85 time series white noise test code. It's basically very similar to what we've seen in other videos. In SPS 10 of HANA, we use the same procedures as we have used from SPS 09. They changed in SPS 09. So notice that we're going to call the sys.afllang wrapper procedure drop and the sys.afllang wrapper procedure create. Those were new in SPS 09, and we continue to use those with SPS 10. Now, if we look at our data, let's just do a quick analysis. We've connected as our dev user here, so we can just run that bit of code. We can see we've got a time series where we've got some data. We don't know that much about it. We don't know whether it's maybe got trends in it, whether it has white noise, whether it's got seasonality. Well, the tests are going to allow us to look at that in more detail. So what are we going to do? Well, the first thing is, as always with the PAL, we're going to create a stored procedure, and we're going to use the wrapper procedure create to do it for us. It's part of the PAL, so we're using AFL PAL, and the name of the algorithm is the white noise test. We're going to create it in our dev user schema, and we're going to give it a procedure name P underscore for procedure. That's my choice. WNT for white noise test. Again, the name is your choice, and then a signature table. Now, that signature table gives all sorts of information about how this procedure is going to be structured with its input and output, which are going to be tables. So it's the same as we've seen with PAL. So we've created, in fact, the signature table, and the signature table contains one row for each either input or output table, giving the order, the schema that it's in, the table type, so the structure of it, and whether it's input or output. And then, of course, that signature table needs to use some table types, which we referenced. So there, before that, we've created the three table types that we need. There's one for the input data itself. There's one for the parameter table we see on almost every PAL algorithm, and one for the output results table, which actually is very straightforward in this case. It's just going to be a name and a value. Now, if you want to know more details of what the structure of these are, that's why you come to the doc, because in the reference guide you'll get, as well as an explanation, you'll get, okay, the white noise test, that's the name of the algorithm to use. These are the three tables that we need to have, two inputs, one output, and it gives you much detail on the structure, not the column names, because that's up to you, but the actual structure, for example, of your input data, what type it needs to be. If it says integer, it means integer. It doesn't mean big int or small int, it means integer. And so you have to be kind of careful sometimes with that, but here you can see all the details, and you can also see details, for example, of some of the parameters that you can set, either mandatory or optional ones, and here are the details on the output table. So we're just going to get a flag basically saying 1 if it identifies white noise and 0 if it doesn't identify white noise. So let's go back to our example. So we've got the code that's basically created our procedure, so we can go ahead and run that. So let's go and run that code first. That's something you would do just once. It's a one-off. Once you've created that procedure, you can reuse it. You don't need to recreate it each time. Then, having created our types for the data, we need to actually create the data. Now, it expects the data to be in a certain format with columns in a certain order as we set up in the table type. The easy way when your table, your data, in our case, the order facts table in the PAL schema, when that data is not already in the right format, if you want to just reorganize the columns and choose the columns you need, maybe in this case we're actually filtering and we're doing a summarization, so we're aggregating using a group by. You can do all of that just in a view without rematerializing. However, for the output table, you can just create a new table called, in our case, results, based on the table type that we already created above. So let's go ahead and do our setting up of the data. So we create our view and we create our results table. And then the things you do at runtime. Now, normally the parameter table with the settings for each individual call of your procedure, you would set up a local temporary column table. So that helps avoid it if you've got multiple users calling the same procedure, because then they will all have their own local column table with the settings for the parameters. So you can set the thread number, and optionally you can set the lag or the probability. More of those is actually in the documentation. I won't go into details here. Then you can clear out your results table, because each time you run it, it's going to append. The PAL always does that. So if you've run it before, of course, you might want to get rid of the previous information. That's your choice. And then we call our procedure, which we called P_WNT for white noise test, with our input view, with the parameter temporary table, and with the output table. And then we can select from the results table. So let's go ahead now and do the runtime part. Let's run that. And don't worry about the drop on params, because the first time it won't exist. And now we can see the procedure has run, and we've got the results table. And the results table is dead simple. You have a row in it, and the name will be white noise, because that's what this test's for. And you'll get the column, which we call white noise, with its value, and the value is either 0, meaning no white noise, or 1, meaning that white noise was detected. So in our input data, it looks like we don't have any white noise, so we're good to go. So that's what we've seen in this video. We've looked at the white noise test, which is one of the time series tests. The next video we'll look at the second time series test, which is the trend test.